Hello and welcome to Precontation Points Video Snack. I read books so that you don't have to. I'm continuing my read-through of Vivid by Ashley Bustamante. Not the first video, go check out the others. Links are posted below. Chapter 13. And that's enough of Ava being on holiday. Time for her to go back to school. Although at least she admits that if she's going to help the Yellows, Elm can't be the one to help her with it. She has to go through legal channels in order to get things changed in their favor. And Elm, she wants to make a point to the benefactors by showing them how valuable that Yellows can be, although how she intends to do that with having literally no access to information about yellow magic is beyond me. Although she does bring up white magic, but if that's anything like yellow magic, they would have purged all and anything about it from the library. Don't let the children know that yellow magic isn't half as dangerous as we're claiming. But Ava doesn't go straight for the jugular with that one. No, she instead reads a book about the history of Magnus. The outside world apparently began to crumble, and benefactors put a protective barrier around it to protect Magnus. And obviously that kind of magic is not something that can be done with red, or blue, or even yellow, because it is white magic. And now has opened her eyes, and Ava is starting to question more and more. However, something else is bothering Ava, something Elm had said about being able to plant ideas in people's minds. But even after he'd pointedly told her this, Ava is still making excuses. She's not thinking that maybe Elm got inside of her head, but she's thinking that she's somehow too stupid to understand what Elm is after. Girl. She leaves the school library and decides to go to the city. Once there, she looks around and thinks about how weird it is that people's identities are based around either wearing red or blue. Nobody wears green or purple or literally any other color outside of their own magic. Hell, even Ava doesn't wear blue, but she wishes that she could from time to time. She wonders why she'd even come into town when a couple of kids burrow into her. As she's handing one of them back his toy, she spots Elm over by the library. He tells her that he'd been thinking of controlling somebody's mind to go in and do the task he'd failed to do last time. Ava tells him that she thought a lot about what he keeps telling her, and while she doesn't think that the benefactors set out to have bad intentions, they aren't going about things in a way that actually benefits society. She then asks if she can't talk him out of doing what he'd come into the city to do before volunteering herself. She says that she's already in trouble, so I think that she figures at this point everything else would just be cherries on top. Although, as I keep bringing up, the first thing that frustrates me the most about Ava's character is that she realizes and even acknowledges a few pages ago that mentalists get inside of people's heads, but she has yet to address the elephant in the room of the possibility of Elm having controlled her mind or even left a suggestion that she should want to help him. He refuses to give her the specifics of what she's going to be doing, but tells her what she needs to do. He gives her a data sphere and tells her to load it onto one of the computers. It sounds like there's a virus on there. He tells her to then wait around the library for another 30 minutes to make it look like she had a legitimate reason to be in the library, but if she feels off, to get out of there at once. She takes it, but has a moment of panic when the free computers don't have slots for data spheres, but then she sees a terminal that's still signed in and puts the data sphere onto it. She opens up the program and has to remind herself that it's time to not do anything for the next half hour or so, so she looks up random school research. Just then, the guy who had been using the computer comes back and kind of yells at Ava. She makes some thin excuse before she leaves. She waits around for half an hour as instructed and had just started to make her way to the front doors when that timer goes off. All of the computer screens go black and 8-bit Elm appears on the monitors and music starts to play. She thinks for a second that all of this is nothing but another one of his dumb pranks. Ava wants to go back in there when she hears a whirring noise, but Elm shows up and tells her that it's time to leave, that the computers are all broken but the people are fine, and that they need to go before the benefactors show up. Outside, Eva asks what she was an accomplice to. He continues to refuse to go into detail, but explains about the virus a little bit, how it hopped from computer to computer and fried each of them from the inside out. She tells him that she'd been contemplating the scenery on the drive into the city and how weird it was that there's no more yellow anywhere in nature. She talks about how they sell baked sunflower seeds for eating, but she misses the actual flowers. He talks about tulips and how the Victorian flower language says that tulip means hopeless love, which I should have seen it coming. This makes Eva feel awkward, and she talks about some of the other yellow things she misses, like lemons, yellow birds, or those bright yellow raincoats. However, the narration also finally acknowledges that the flowers copied earlier were daisies. Up until literally just right now, they were a vague yellow flowers, which makes me wonder if Ashley didn't suddenly discover the language of flowers. They drive back to the school, and Elm tells her that it would be dangerous if she were to come to him, so he asks that she lie low for a while. He kisses her hands and thanks her for her help. Chapter 14. It's been a week since the incident in the city library, and Ava watches the news stories about it. Even though by her own admission they're all just spinning this for as long as possible, she feels guilty over the boy whose computer terminal that she used. Everybody honestly thinks that Elm used yellow magic to compel him to do this, but never once has it occurred to any of them that the boy has literally nothing to do with anything and was just an unfortunate bystander. Ava also thinks that it's weird that nobody has come to question her about being at the library that day. She knows that there must have been security footage of her at the library, and she wonders why they're screaming so much about catching Elm, but don't seem to be following every possible lead, no matter how small. She goes to her blue magic class. She still feels weird about Blake and thinks that he wouldn't hesitate to turn her in if he suspected something, which, well, maybe Celine would sell Ava's soul for one corn chip, but does Ava seriously have such little faith in other people that she thinks every single person is like that? The teacher appears to be talking about recoloring objects and mentions color blending theory, that is to say that you can't make purple without mixing blue and red, and that makes Ava think that there's this entire section of the color wheel that's completely missing because of it. Although, now that I'm thinking about it, when Ava brought that propaganda magazine, she said that the cover was orange. In printers, you have cyan, magenta, and yellow ink, and they mix together to create literally every single color imaginable. If yellow is outlawed, why do they even have yellow ink in printers? Although now I'm just picturing Elm breaking into the school's printers to steal ink cartridges. Ava has a random thought that school books might not have any info about white magic, but what about old books? She thinks that maybe Elm's yellow magic books might have more info and wants to go to him, but she thinks for a long time about how people are bound to notice her even if she's invisible. She thinks about how weird it would look if her bedroom door opened seemingly of its own accord, and so on. She decides to go to the unused wing of the school, but then she runs into the suspicious benefactor from the little kid color assignment ceremony, Jace. He asks what she's doing, which is standard stuff, and she says that she's looking through the older parts of the school to see if there's such and such equipment before they order a new one. But then he asks her about how the search for Elm is going, despite him being a benefactor and she a student, as if this guy wasn't being weird enough. He insists that he wants to know what the standard citizens know, and Ava says that she's been keeping up with the news. However, the scene ends with him convincing her not to be alone in the unused part of the school, and he goes on his way once they're in the main part again. Ava thinks that it really is too dangerous to see Elm right now and tries to think of how she can learn about white magic, but then she thinks about the vendor from the city and how she might know something, but they don't have another free weekend for another month, and Ava's desperate for information now. Instead, she then decides to turn her search inward, which she admits she hadn't considered before. She goes invisible, sneaks into Celine's office, and steals her permission card to go into the city. Why she doesn't use her newfound power to spy on Celine and the benefactors is beyond me, but here we are. The city is teeming with even more benefactors. She makes her way to the same street, only to find the destroyed remains of the woman's card. A random man tells her that the benefactors destroyed it because they didn't like what she was saying. Ava tries to ask him about white magic, but he's like, "Do you want to get into trouble like the vendor did?" Two benefactors show up, and the man pointedly tells Ava the directions to a war memorial museum. Ava doesn't want to go, but after a moment she eventually catches on that there must be some reason the man is sending her there. She goes there, although she's reluctant, mainly because thinking of the war only just reminds her that she lost her parents during it, but she decides that she's never going to learn anything if her head is buried in the sand, so she goes in. Inside is the typical memorial museum stuff. There's a plaque that talks about how one morning was just another ordinary morning with people buying things in a shop, and then the Yellows attacked. Ava now understands that things aren't always as they seem and questions if that actually happened. There's a digital directory where people can look up the names of their loved ones who died at any point during the war. Ava's parents were supposed to have died as a result of the war, but she can't find them under lock. She tries her mother's name, Vivian, and then her father's name of Lucas. Nothing. She asks the guy at the front desk, although he offers the paper-thin excuse of how much chaos happened as a result. It's possible her parents were simply not recorded on accident. However, I'd like to offer up a counter-argument to that. It's been more than a decade, and if Celine knows that her parents died, why wouldn't she have seen that their names would be properly recorded in official records? There are so many flags at play here, it's not even funny. However, as Ava leaves the museum and gets into a car to go back to the school, she begins to have even more doubts. She has now directly stolen from Celine and doesn't even have answers, and says she just has nothing but question after question with no end in sight to any of them. Chapter 15. Ava goes directly to Elm's cave, but in there she's blinded for a moment because of his security measures. The intent is to blind them and quickly send them on their way before he knows what's happening. Since he hadn't been expecting her, she got hit with it. Ava doesn't want to worry him about her weird run-in with Jace, but for some reason she also doesn't tell him about how the vendor had disappeared or about what she didn't find in the War Museum. Instead, she simply says that she's ready to finally have some answers. Amma agrees and says that she's in really deep at this point, so she might as well. She says that she wants to convince the benefactors that not all yellows are bad, and she can't do that without actual knowledge. So they go into his bedroom area, although Ava is disappointed when he hands her what's basically Yellow Magic 101. She goes elsewhere in the cave to actually start reading. Ellen flits around doing vague things that Ava doesn't pay attention to because she's too busy with the book. Eventually, Ellen tells her that it's dusk and that she should get back. Ava wants to stay longer, but he insists, with the promise that the book will still be there. As they leave the cave, he asks if she really thinks that she can influence the benefactors. And then that's the end of the chapter, as short as it was. Thanks for listening to my chapter-by-chapter review of Vivid. I'm going to post a new video every day until I run out of chapters. Once I finish with Vivid, I promise to get back to the regular Monday update schedule and resume Fury. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all of my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main snarks, you can find even more snark on my Patreon. You can access it for $1 a month. Members also get early access to my main Tumblr snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my snark so much that you want me to snark your writing? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your writing is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just 1 cent per word. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of erotic short stories and now 2 full-length novels. I also sometimes run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do that just so you can know when I might be offering more things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you tomorrow, guys!